police
in the morning.
Movie fans, to another installment of Director's Showcase, a show where we select a different director each month and watch as many films by that director as we can. We then choose a different film by that director to review each week, and at the end of the month we decide which of the 5 films by that selected director we think stand above the rest. I'm B-Movie Paul.
And I'm Phantom Dark Dave.
And this is week 2 of Alfred Hitchcock month, so we will be reviewing Hitchcock's 1959 action thriller film, North by Northwest. Alright, so what did you think of North by Northwest, Dave?
It's a good movie. It's a spy movie. Not my favorite kind of movie, but it is an Alfred Hitchcock spy movie, so it was definitely worth watching. I have to say that if you haven't seen it, you need to see it, but you have to have 2 hours and 16 minutes to spare.
Yeah, this is a surprisingly long movie, especially for 1959. Like, it was... I actually had to watch it in 2 sittings. Like, I don't have this much time to watch a movie, so yeah. It was a good film, I do have to say that. Like, it was a lot going on throughout it.
I really like how the movie starts out. It's very vivid, as most Hitchcock intros are. This movie here, even just the initial background is like a vivid kind of neon green screen, the white letters floating across, and then all of a sudden you see like these blue lines, almost like bars, just kind of coming in all, at a perpendicular, making this tic-tac-toe formation, and then all of a sudden it starts to fade, and you realize the bars are the outlines of windows on a building. And so the way that it just shows, you don't know what's going on, and then it starts to fade, and then you're looking at the building, and the building is glass, and it's reflecting the streets. And so the whole first few minutes, you're basically just seeing how insanely busy the city life is.
Pretty
and
much.
that stood out to me a lot as, I really like Alfred Hitchcock's choice on here, but I got to give it to the director of photography.
Definitely. If I remember correctly, this is one of the first films that had a really vivid opening that had a lot going on. Like, because before this, most of them were pretty standard. It was just like the name of the film and people who had been in this. So this was pretty unique for the time period.
Yeah, and then also the music they used too is a very upbeat tempo that it added to the whole. It gave you like this chaotic feeling.
Definitely.
But no, I very much enjoyed it. So, the good news about this movie, even though it's a little long, is it does grab you from the beginning. There's a lot of tension built up. And another note on that, the director of photography, his name's Robert Burks. He collaborated with like 10 or 15 movies with Alfred Hitchcock.
That's pretty awesome. They made it.
So if you kind of like that, you're bound to like many others.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on. It's not a boring movie by any means. Like, at just about every point, there's something interesting going on. Like, if I had more time in the day, I would have watched it through only one sitting. But yeah, it's not the fault of the movie. It's more just the fault of the fact that, life just kind of keeps going. But
and that's kind of the same thing with the movie itself is, Cary Grant's running around. He's accused for murder that he didn't commit, and he's always running into one predicament after another. So his life also just keeps going, and he never gets a break.
it's true. It's like one thing after another. Like, he's in this position, then he's in there, and then shit just hits the fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's your typical spy movie. You're set up by somebody else trying to be blackmailed. Now you're having to run for your life. Somebody's after you, and you have to prove your innocence and figure out who's trying to take you down and why. And you get a lot of colorful characters in this movie.
Yeah. Speaking of Cary Grant, I'd say one of the things I really liked about this film was the acting was top-notch all around. Cary Grant, always great, and he had really great chemistry with Eva Marie Saint and James Mason. James Mason was great as the villain, and he came off as ruthless, but you kind of see him as like a full person and how he interacts with Eva Marie Saint's character Eve, and just you see him like as actually caring about people, and I really like that. Yeah, the acting was, I had absolutely no problems with that. I don't think there was a single bad actor in that or bad performance.
I'm going to tag off that because that's perfect. Alfred Hitchcock knew in the beginning he wanted Cary Grant for this movie, but at the time, Cary Grant was not ready to do it, and so originally they were hiring James Stewart, which you and I both love James Stewart. He already has a reputation with Hitchcock, but that's not who Hitchcock wanted. So what happened was, I had read, rumor has it, Hitchcock pushed the production back to a convenient time where James Stewart was not available, and he was able to get Cary Grant, which I think worked out for this movie.
Definitely. I can't see James Stewart doing this. I mean, I really like James Stewart. I loved him in Vertigo and Rope and Rear Window and just really anything I've seen him in.
James Stewart cannot be the only Alfred Hitchcock star.
Exactly. Like, actually, that's that brings me to an interesting point. I was reading a little bit about Cary Grant and James Stewart, because they've both apparently been in 4 different Hitchcock films. Cary Grant was in Suspicion, Notorious, To Catch a Thief, and North by Northwest. And James Stewart was in Rope, Rear Window, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and Vertigo. So they're kind of like basically Hitchcock alumni.
Yeah, man, one of them should have did just one more to take the gold.
It would have been great if they were in a Hitchcock film together. That would have been really
yes, as soon as you said that, that's what I was thinking, like the ultimate Hitchcock movie.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. One interesting thing I read was apparently Hitchcock, he casted Cary Grant and James Stewart in his films because he viewed them as two, very differently. He apparently viewed Cary Grant as being the ideal, archetypal, person that he would like to be. He saw him as being strong, heroic, decisive, and he saw James Stewart as the opposite, at least in his acting. I don't know how he actually felt about the guy, but he saw him as being, kind of weak, indecisive, nervous and things like that. So it's interesting when you see a film with one of them, you know that was the type of character that he was going for. And it's kind of I guess it says a lot about Hitchcock, because he viewed Cary Grant as the man he'd like to be, but he viewed James Stewart as the man that he believes he actually is. So it kind of says a lot about Alfred Hitchcock, but also about the type of people that he puts in his films and the type of characters he likes to build around, just because altogether there were in 8 of his films. So.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with either one of those guys, but you definitely have to have the right one in the right movie.
Definitely.
I was going to talk to you about a few things here. Did you have any favorite scenes in this movie? Anything stand out to you?
Well, there were 2 scenes that definitely stood out to me because I had seen them in other things before this, but it was cool kind of seeing it actually in the movie that it originated. Got to talk about the crop duster scene, of course.
Of course.
I was fully expecting to be disappointed by that scene, because this is 1959, I've seen it, parodied in things, I've seen, people make reference to it, but it was actually well done. I was impressed by it. When,
yeah. I really like that scene as well, but even more so, I like the build-up to that scene. So, what happens is, Cary Grant's standing there, and then he's just kind of standing at the road. He's expecting to meet somebody, and then this car right across the street just pulls up, drops some guy off, and the car backs up down the driveway. And for a solid few seconds, you just have these 2 guys in suits staring at each other across the street, and they do this wide angle camera shot, and they're standing in the foreground, and then in the background you just see the countryside, and then you're like, I don't know what's gonna. It just builds so much tension, and Cary Grant's just kind of staring at the guy are you the guy I'm supposed to be here for, or are you the guy I'm running from? And the other guy stares at him why are you staring at me?
It turned out it was just a guy waiting for the bus or something like that.
Yeah, then a bus comes up and it's just oh, okay. But and I love it too because they use that bus so well. The camera focuses on the bus pulling up, and then as the bus drives away, the camera shows kind of from behind this angle Cary Grant standing there, and then you see that plane flying in the background. Yeah. But of course, we can't forget, one of the infamous lines in there, is that guy who Cary Grant ends up, introducing himself to while they're waiting for the bus, and the guy says, "That's funny. That plane's dusting crops where there ain't no crops."
Yeah.
And
It's
instantly you're like,
foreshadowing of
that's
that.
not a good thing.
Yeah, if I don't know if I would have picked up on that. Like, I thought it was been a weird, like, kind of thrown in line had I not known it was going to happen. Like, I mean, at this point, like, that scene is so iconic that, like, you'd have to be living under a rock not to have known what happened. But either way, like, it was just such a cool scene, like, just because it's like, oh wow, that's what they're going for, and then it crashes into the truck and like everything. Then you're left with a nice explosion. That was a very well done scene, and even knowing that it was going to happen, I was not disappointed.
Right. I mean, it just seems so simple, yet it was so effective.
Oh yeah,
So I imagine seeing that for the first time in 1959, people were probably just, their hearts are blowing up out of their chest, you know?
oh yeah. Hitchcock was really good with that, like making scenes that like just stand out. Like I think he's known for more individual scenes than he is for like his films overall. Even though he makes great films, like there are so many like iconic scenes in them. Like everyone knows this shower scene in Psycho. Everyone knows the crop duster scene, and just
That's right. Yeah, when you talk about Psycho, that's the first thing that pops up is that shower scene. So I think you hit the kind of nail on the head there.
Definitely.
What other scene stood out to you?
At the very end of the movie, where I guess spoiler alert. I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, people probably won't see it. But yeah, at the very end when they're on top of Mount Rushmore in that chase scene, like I didn't realize that was actually to a movie. I thought that was just I forget where the first parody it was, or like reference I'd seen to it. I'm like, okay, that was kind of cool. Then I saw it again. I'm like, huh, they can't be making a reference to that show I watched not long ago. So then I realized it was to a movie, but I didn't know it was North by Northwest. So I'm watching it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's where that's from. I finally got to figure that mystery out, but that was really cool.
Not only do you get a crop duster scene, you get a Mount Rushmore scene.
Exactly.
Yeah, that scene is pretty awesome.
Interesting thing about that one was that Alfred Hitchcock, when he and the writer of this movie, Ernest Lehman, they were coming up with ideas for it, and Alfred Hitchcock said the only thing he come up with when they first started talking was that he wanted a chase scene on top of Mount Rushmore. He goes, I don't care how it gets there, I just want this in my film. Like that's amazing. And
yeah, such a random kind of spontaneous idea, but it just shows, determination and the passion that he had for his film.
Oh yeah.
I actually had another scene I was going to talk about. I enjoyed the crop duster scene. I enjoyed Mount Rushmore, but in the middle of the movie, there is a scene where Cary Grant drives drunk. Do you remember that scene?
Oh yeah, the chase scene. That was.
That one was pretty crazy. So basically, Cary Grant's character, he's forced his intoxication, and they set him up in his car and attempt to have him drive off the cliff like a suicide, and he kind of pulls it together, but he's speeding down these like farm roads, and the camera is like right on the hood, kind of facing Cary Grant, so you see his entire facial reactions the whole time he's trying to shake off his buzz, but he all you can see on the road is only the diameter of the headlights, so you don't know what's coming, which way the road turns until you have to turn. And so the animosity they built up there, and not to mention he passes by the Glen Clove police officer who chases him, so now you have drunk Cary Grant who's being chased by an officer in the dark on these farm roads, and then the bad guys are behind the cop. I mean, they do a pretty good job of building that up. I thought it was really well done.
Definitely, that was definitely one of the more entertaining ones. The chase scene looks kind of ridiculous nowadays, just because you can always tell back in the movies that it's not really a road. It's like that's behind them. It's like a projector and all that, or like just like a green screen and all that. So it's just after seeing like what we have now, it's like you can tell, but like putting it into the context of 1959, it was definitely a cool scene.
Yeah, I definitely say, North by Northwest, if you haven't seen it, watch it. Like I said before, it is a good movie. It's, invest, almost 2.5 hours into it, but kind of like Paul's saying there, you're going to see these landmark scenes which you may have seen parodied in Simpsons or Family Guy or some other TV show, but it's really good to see where it pulls its source from.
Definitely. Yeah. So, did you have any problems with the movie? Anything that you didn't like?
Um, Nothing too specific. I won't nitpick and tear a film apart, especially by Hitchcock. But I think overall, I'm glad the movie gets a lot of credit. It definitely deserves the credit it gets. But instead of shaking Mr. Hitchcock's hand, I'm really going to shake the photography guy's hand, Robert Burks. I think that those scenes would not be as successful if he hadn't have filmed them the way he did. Like I said, even putting the camera on the hood and kind of filming, instead of just seeing the car drive by, the way that they filmed Cary Grant like head on with his facial features and capturing all the emotions when they're on Mount Rushmore, seeing people looking down. I'm not going to tear the movie apart. I know you might have something, but I'm just going to give it a thumbs up.
I've got a couple things, but like I'm also remembering that this is an action thriller crime movie, so these are like you said before. Like I don't particularly like this genre. Like I'm not against it, but it's not like my go-to genre. But I felt like the plot was mostly made up of coincidences. Like Roger just happened to be calling a waiter who at the same time said the name of a spy who wasn't really a spy that existed but was a distraction from a real spy, and it's just like so coincidental that it's a little bit ridiculous. And then there was the whole the love story between Roger and Eve, and like it's real weird because they're just talking on the train, and it's pretty good dialogue, them talking and everything, and they're obviously flirting with each other. Then it turns out that Eve is working with the guy who's trying to kill him, but then isn't actually doing that. She's actually working with the police, and they're basically infatuated with each other, from what I can tell, because like they both like the dangerous adventure life, and they're both kind of like talking about like how he's wanted for murder, and it's kind of sexy. They're talking about like how he's on the run, and you can tell she's into it, but then none of that turns out to be true on either one of their sides. But then they still have this like infatuation with each other. The whole time I'm like, okay, I just need something a little more than that, something that keeps these two together. Because then like at the end of the film, she's forced to go back with the bad guy, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. They didn't really give a good reason for that. Like she had to keep doing her spy stuff, but I don't know. I didn't buy that very much. But he goes after her because he's in love with her. I'm like, but really, why? Like, okay, come on. Like, this is Cary Grant we're talking about. You mean to tell me he doesn't have other women like this, like, falling for him? I mean, like, he's a good-looking man. He's obviously successful. He's charismatic and everything. Like, why this woman? And I just didn't see a good enough reason for that. And I know I'm nitpicking. This is, like, the reason why was because, he's going on an adventure and, like, it's basically a life-altering thing. And of course, like, what better than, like, meeting a woman who he'd, like, fall head over heels for, but I needed a little more for them to stick together, especially for all he did to go after her. And I know I'm nitpicking, but I couldn't quite accept that.
That's okay. One of us has to agree, the other has to disagree. But I have a question for you.
Yeah, okay.
If they were going to remake this movie, who do you think would play Cary Grant's character? Do you think this would be a Tom Cruise movie?
Oh God, I would hate Tom Cruise in this. Like
North by Northwest remake starring Tom Cruise.
North by North, Mission Impossible.
Oh yeah, I tried as you were describing. It's a spy action adventure. I'm like, oh, it sounds like a Tom Cruise movie.
Pretty much, yeah. Like I don't like Tom Cruise, but I really like Cary Grant. Like the idea of Tom Cruise playing this character like that kills me. I'd have to fight somebody on that one. But
Nothing could save it from itself.
maybe like Pierce Brosnan or something would pull it off. Like I don't know. Like trying to think of like some charismatic character who's I don't think this would be a terrible movie to remake. Like it's as good the way.
Yeah, there's tons of movies that should never be touched, and I believe North by Northwest is one of them.
Definitely. Like, imagine them trying to remake the crop duster scene. Like,
I
it'd be
was
all
just thinking about that.
CGI.
It'd be some sort of CGI.
It would look terrible, and
Oh.
that's a terrible thought. Like, Alfred Hitchcock would come back to life just to smack somebody in the face.
Yeah, I think it makes me nauseous to consider that they might even remake this. They've remade Psycho, and it's only a matter of time before they remake something else.
Yeah, I've avoided the remake of Psycho. I heard it was not bad, but as far as I'm concerned, like, you can't do it. Like, I don't think there's a single Hitchcock film that should be remade. Like, I can't really imagine. Like, I think they remade like Rear Window with like Shia LaBeouf and called it something different. Like, it was
Disturbia.
that was it. Yeah, it's like, oh, come on. Like, I remember watching the commercial for that. I'm like, wait, this is just Rear Window with Shia LaBeouf. Like, no, like, somebody needs to get fired for this. I'm not. It could be a great film, but it can't be because it's a remake of Rear Window with Shia LaBeouf. Like, no, you don't do it.
Next thing you know, you have James Stewart remaking Transformers just to get back at him.
Oh my god.
But-
I'd watch it. I'd imagine Transformers by Alfred Hitchcock. That would be.
Oh. But so, have we decided what movie we're gonna watch next? Tell the audience.
That's a tough one. Well, first, out of 10, what would you give this movie?
Let's see here. I gave Rope a 10 out of 10, didn't I? So I think North by Northwest, I'm gonna go with a 6.
I give this one a 7 out of 10. It's fun. It's constantly something going on. It's visually encapsulating, and there's so many iconic scenes that are just so intrinsic in pop culture that, like, I think that anybody, even if you don't like this kind of film, and you got to see it just for like the cultural relevance. But yeah, I enjoyed this film. Like, it's not perfect, and I wouldn't be me if I wasn't nitpicking at stuff. Like, that's just kind of how my brain works. But there was such a great cast to this, and there really was not a single bad performance in this. Like, I thought it was great all around, and yeah, just everything worked for it, despite the fact that if you think too hard about it, you'll start to find problems. But if you just accept it for what it is and don't think about the details, it's a fine movie.
Yeah, couldn't said it better myself.
Yeah. So, thinking about the next movie in our Alfred Hitchcock month, I'd say we should go with the film Vertigo.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I think that one would that would be a fun one to review. It's kind of a mystery thriller, and it's got some murders in it, so it kind of balances out Rope and North by Northwest a little bit.
Looks like we're going to alternate our Stewart and Grant movies here.
Oh yeah. Well, for people who are familiar with Hitchcock, I think they can guess what's going to be the last film, but I'm not going to give that away just yet. So.
You'd be crazy if you did.
What are you, psycho? All right, so this has been another episode of Director's Showcase. Tune in for the next episode as we go into week number 3 of Alfred Hitchcock month. Till then, I'm B Movie Paul,
And I'm Phantom Dark Dave.
and we will see you next time.
You know, when they...